YouTube Oz going the Goat House is back with another bold predictions, this time for NFL Week 4, taking your guys' hot takes that you sent in through Twitter and giving you my thoughts, how hot they actually are, if they're very realistic or what we can expect this week. A lot of you have been sending in some good ones. I unfortunately can't use all of them, so I kind of just go through and maybe I don't even see them all, so I apologize if I don't use yours, but I kind of just go through and whatever ones catch my eye, I just throw them in there and, we break them down right here. So appreciate you for playing along. If you're interested in playing along in the future weeks to come, here, follow that Twitter. We also got plenty other videos keeping you guys involved and always talking football. There's a Thursday night game tonight. It's not the best one, but it's Broncos-Jets. It's football. I'm still excited. I'm going to be live tweeting throughout that entire game, like I do for every game. So that Twitter's a must follow. We have an Instagram, we have a podcast, and we have a Patreon as well. We're trying to get to 60K subscriber goal, so please help us out by subscribing. Full NFL coverage. We got picks every single week, got power rankings. We got you. We got you covered here. For that Patreon, though, we got some extra content. Junior's got his score predictions. I got my locks / bets of the week, college football score predictions. Those things usually pop up on Wednesday night, sometimes Thursday, earlier Thursday. So those are up for this week, for week 4. Updated playoff predictions will start very soon, near future, and we'll continue to update those every single week. We actually predict who wins each round of the playoffs, and that'll go on throughout the regular season. Bonus content, always adding more. Got some other things we're working on to add to the Patreon as well, and Discord max access. Plenty more. Let's go on to the bold predictions. So first one, Mubarak Jamba. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Matt Ryan blows another lead in the fourth quarter, and Dan Quinn is gone after week 4. So it's kind of a two-parter here. But Matt Ryan blows another. Okay, I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say this is piping. It's a piping hot take. Really, this is an interesting one that you can argue either way here because it's realistic because the Falcons have done it, and if it continues, really, Dan Quinn should already been fired, really, in my opinion. So honestly, there is things in the past, build up that has kind of supported this take here. I'm gonna say it's piping though, because I don't think it happens. Mainly is the reason. I think the Packers are a really good matchup, the Falcons are a really good matchup for the Packers, I should say, on both sides of the ball, really. So I think the Packers will be just fine. Prime time in Green Bay, keep in mind. I think they'll be just fine, so there'll really be no lead to blow. And I don't think the Falcons are pretty stubborn. I think they'll probably wait till after the season. I mean, if they start something like, maybe if I think they got the Vikings in a few weeks. That could be a potential game where Dan Quinn gets fired because it could be two teams with 0 wins going against each other. We'll see when we get there, but that's a few weeks away. If he loses a game like that and he still has no wins, that could be the game. And if he's not fired after that game, I think it's going to take the whole season. So I think this is piping just because I don't think either of these things happen. But you could argue maybe against me putting piping up there because some things have happened to make this, I guess, realistic here. And now we actually got another one that's kind of part of that with the Falcons here from Nicholas Vandenberg, Donnie Vandenbeek. I don't know why I just said that, but Nicholas Vandenberg, Falcons will come back to beat the Packers. So a little bit of the opposite here. The Falcons have been blowing these comebacks, and now they do the opposite. This is pretty piping as well. They have the offense to do this. Let's say they're down. The Packers could possibly get conservative, just get a pretty decent lead and just try to run the ball and then run the clock, and that could backfire on them. Usually when that backfires on teams, it's because they go 3 and out. They're just too worried about running the clock, really nothing else, and then the offense goes down, marches down. The Falcons are pretty capable, but I don't think against the Packers. The Packers really don't get too conservative. They can, and they can get away with it, and that's kind of the other part to that. I think, Aaron Jones is very capable of, even though the Falcons know they're running the ball, still he's very capable of moving the ball there against that Falcons defense. So I don't think, it's just a really good matchup for the Packers. They're also the much better team. So I don't think there'll be a comeback. The Falcons could win the game. I just don't think it'll be a come from behind. I guess what do you consider a comeback, I guess, is a big part of this too. So I'm going to say it's pretty piping, though. I just don't see a scenario with this happening, honestly. When I think comeback, I think more than maybe 14 or more points, maybe. So, I mean, you could consider anything a comeback, really. So, I guess that's a tough one. From Lewis, Brett Rypien making his debut tonight, Thursday Night Football against the Jets, the former Boise State Broncos, starting for the Denver Broncos. Brett Rypien gets 300-plus yards. This is a good one. This is definitely one I like talking about here because here we are on Thursday night. Brett Rypien get his first start. He's kind of beating out Jeff Driscoll now. Driscoll getting the bench. But 300 yards really isn't. It's a lot. It's a lot, but it's really not a whole bunch in today's NFL with the amount of passing plays these teams call. Passing plays these teams call, and I guess looking at the Jets defense, you can throw all over this Jets defense if you really want to. We'll see if Brett Rypien's capable of doing it. So it sounds pretty piping, but it might not be because Rypien's got an arm. Will he be accurate? That's kind of the question. I think would he finish 8 for 9 with an interception? So that's kind of positive, negative there. 8 for 9, pretty accurate, and then interception though. That's tough. I'm gonna say hot. I'm gonna say it's hot. Yeah, it's definitely not piping because, like I said, 300s is realistic. But do you really expect that from Brett Rypien? Probably not. That's what makes it hot. But also, I think they'll kind of feed Melvin Gordon. They'll really get Melvin Gordon going, so that'll kind of limit the. I guess the passing attempts, even though they'll be there. So it's pretty hot, but it could be somewhat realistic as well. And then we got another Brett Rypien one that I liked here from Joseph. Brett Rypien outduels Sam Darnold and Gase is fired. So I feel like we've had a Gase is fired one on one of our episodes of anything. I don't know. Maybe it was this video every single week. It feels like. So yeah, it's kind of a two-part. Brett Rypien outduels Sam Darnold. I think that's. I'm gonna call that warm. So we have. That's pretty real. Warm would mean very realistic. I think pretty realistic. I think Darnold is better than Rypien, but it's really not. That's really not all that goes into it. Depending on the game going. I'm not really predicting Rypien to outduel Sam Darnold. I'm predicting Rypien to beat Sam Darnold, but not really because of Rypien or because of Darnold. It's just because of the Broncos and the Jets. I think the Broncos have more impact players, but he can. Based on what's going on with the game, Darnold could be put in a situation where he's one-dimensional, he has no choice but to throw. That'd be very predictable for Vic Fangio's defense, which even though beat up, it's still pretty solid. Got some impact players out there. So for that reason, yeah, it's very realistic that Rypien can outdo Sam Darnold. Gase is fired. I've been on the train of that they're just not going to fire him because they got too much trust in him. Even though there's a new GM in there, even though there is a GM in there, it feels like Gase has had full control. I feel like they've came out and said that too. Gase came in, they removed some guys from the front office, including the GM, and then they kind of bring in another one. It felt like Gase was kind of in charge doing that. So for those reasons, I felt like they had too much trust in Gase to fire him during the year. But from what I'm hearing around the league, it's kind of getting close because he's just doing a very poor job. We hear things coming out of practice, that just not good things. Players talking bad about how practices are going. So it's starting to become more realistic. So for the first part, I put warm. The second part, I'm going to put it's hot still, but I do think it's realistic. If we want to go, both of them need to happen. So Rypien outduels Darnold and Gase gets fired. So both. I was about to go piping, but I'm going to say hot because if they just get beat here to a beat up Broncos team, that might be the final straw. So I think it's somewhat realistic still, but for both to happen, I'd say hot. So that's a pretty good one. And it's definitely an interesting hot topic here going into the Thursday night game. Next from Birdie. Foles gets benched for Trubisky. I thought this was pretty funny because they just took Trubisky out for Foles, and I'm gonna say this is piping, and to me this is piping hot. Not really because you could say if Foles just plays bad, they'll put Trubisky in, and it's realistic in any case. But I think it's piping mainly because, and this is why I think choosing Trubisky to start was so wrong in the first place. They got away with it, Nagy, and if Pace had some say to it, they got away with it because they haven't lost yet. So they did get away with it, but I strongly disagree with it. But mainly for this reason, I believe Trubisky had a short leash where Foles does not. And that pretty much tells us who they think the better quarterback. It felt like they knew they were going to put Foles in. They know he's the better quarterback. They had a very, very short leash on Trubisky. And for, I don't think you should start a quarterback when you have that in mind in the back of your head on a guy. That pretty much sums up what you think of the guy. And Trubisky, I've seen him play worse. He was playing bad. He's playing bad against the Falcons, but we've seen that over and over. We've seen much, much worse. So it was pretty easy for them to pull him, and he's undefeated at this point, even though it wasn't really because of him. So that kind of proves he had an extremely short leash, and Foles will not. Foles is just stepping into the system. They're going to give him time. This is a perfect guy for this playbook, for this system. They're going to give him time, bottom line. So I'm going to say that's piping. I thought that was, it's a funny one, but it's kind of a good one at the same time if you think about it. Because they are pretty attached to Trubisky, but I think that has kind of been separated, removed here at this point. Another Trubisky, or another Foles one, I should say another Bears one here from Chase. Nick Foles shows up like the Super Bowl winning Nick Foles and legitimizes them being a contender. That's a good one. It's a tough one as well. I've been on the Nick Foles train for the Bears. Why? Because I think he's I've hyped up the Bears, too. I think early in the offseason, I kind of like the Bears making the playoffs if Nick Foles is the quarterback, and I'm kind of sticking by that. But I could see people kind of taking it the wrong way, me thinking Nick Foles is this great quarterback and the Bears are this great team because Nick Foles. It's not really the case. I just think they're a lot better than people think, and I think they're a lot better than with Nick Foles and Trubisky. So it depends on what he means by contender, but I'm going to say that's a tough one because it's kind of a two-parter. I almost want to say piping if he means Super Bowl contender because Nick Foles, Eagles Nick Foles and Bears Nick Foles, I think there's a difference. We're going to see some similar play calls there in the Nagy system. It's pretty much the same stuff, and that's why I liked him. It's been a few years since then, so you maybe could say with an injury, with just age, a little bit of a decline. I don't think anything major, but my point is maybe Nick Foles isn't quite as good. I don't think anything major. Not too far off. Maybe not as good as he was in the Eagles that Super Bowl year run. Also, I look at that Eagles team. That is one of the more complete teams in NFL history. So it's going to be very hard to compare the two. Nick Foles with that team versus Nick Foles with this team, which, again, I think the Bears can definitely be a playoff team with Nick Foles here. But, yeah, that's why I'd say it's piping because I don't think – this week against the Colts, yeah, he can play very well, and that's because I think he's a solid quarterback. I think the Bears could be a solid team with him. And also, even though the Colts defense is pretty good, they may not know how to game plan for this. The playbook opens up more. There's some plays that we may not have seen from the Bears with Trubisky or from Nagy at all that we will see this week against the Colts or that the Colts haven't seen. So he can play really good this week, and that could bring positivity around the NFL from the fans, and that can have people believing they can be a better playoff contender. They can win a game in the playoffs. But putting it together, that's why it's a tough one because putting it together, I don't know if he'll ever be, maybe not too far off, like I said, but I don't know if he'll ever be like that Super Bowl winning Nick Foles. And it depends on what you mean by contender. I think he means Super Bowl contender. I just don't. My list of Super Bowl contenders, you don't even want to know my list for Super Bowl contenders. It's probably smaller than anybody else's on the planet, which I think that's what it should be. I think it's you have to check so many boxes to be able to win a Super Bowl, and there's only a few teams that have it. So, maybe at the halfway point, we could talk about who I think are playoff contenders, who are not, and then who are, contenders, pretenders. We can do the same thing for Super Bowl contenders. But, yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. I'll call it piping just because I think so much needs to happen there. But the Bears with Nick Foles, they can be a sneaky good team. Eli Hansford. J.J. Watt will have at least 2.5 sacks. And I always want to put one here that I think is very realistic. I'm going to call this warm for sure. I think if he 2.5's a lot. I expect him to have 2 sacks. I think if we end that game against the Vikings and he doesn't have 2 sacks, I think it's a little bit of a disappointing outing. He possibly can get pressure and cause a guy like Kirk Cousins to throw picks, and that could be just as good while not getting the 2 sacks. But my point is I'm fully expecting him to get 2 sacks. 2.5 is definitely doable. Vikings offensive line is one of the worst in football. The interior is pretty bad. I think they'll probably line him up over guards actually a bit more than we're used to from J.J. Watt, which he lines up everywhere. I've seen him even at nose tackle. I've seen him as an edge rusher, seen him at 3 technique, 5 technique. What 5 technique is, you consider him like an end, so it's more like an edge rusher anyways. But basically my point is he lines up everywhere. Vikings got a rough offensive line. Cousins tends to hold the ball a little too, not really long, but given that he's had a bad offensive line and he should be getting the ball out quicker. So for that reason, yeah, Watt can do that. I think it's very realistic is my point there. Next, from Raider Nation, Aldon Smith has another 3-sack game. Had 3 sacks last week, even though they lost that game to the Seahawks. But, got 3 sacks and for the Cowboys there. And now playing the Cleveland Browns. I think he's very capable of doing this. But does he do it? That's the question here. But I'm gonna say it's piping. It's possible because he's done it. But I look at in the game against the Browns, I think it's going to be hard to get sacks in that game. I think you can get pressure. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Baker, I think, at times. But it's going to be hard to be able to get, and they're going to get sacks. It's going to be hard for one guy to get 3 sacks. They're going to run the ball a lot. That's going to open up the play-action pass. You can't really guess, on the play-action pass because you guess run. Baker's going to have too much time. If you guess play-action pass, the run is going to be wide. Somebody's going to score. Nick Chubb's going to go the distance. He's going to score. So I think if it's tough because if the Cowboys get a pretty big, that's the difference. So, I might change this actually to what I'm thinking now. I might change it to hot. It's still pretty hot. We got a swap-a-roo here, but if the Cowboys, and I'm not really predicting this to happen, but if the Cowboys get up 14 points, if they get up 2 scores, we'll say, or even more, it's going to force the Browns. That's going to take away their run game. What does that do? That takes away the play-action game because if the run isn't feared, there's no point to play action. So that's going to force them to only pass, and that's where the pass rush will flood in, and they will get sacks with Baker in the pocket there. So it's actually more possible now that I'm talking about it, but still one player get 3 sacks. That'd be very impressive. He's been impressive, though. From Noah, Taysom Hill has a passing touchdown, rushing touchdown, receiving touchdown against the Lions Sunday. Somebody else sent one in that had yards for Taysom Hill, so they're both on the same page here. I actually think the touchdowns are a little more realistic than the yards. I think the person had 100 yards for each, just because that would include multiple attempts for each. And I don't think that's going to happen, really. I think this really can only take 1 attempt each. He can throw one. They can give him 1 pass attempt, in the red zone on the goal line. Same thing for rushing, same thing receiving. It's pretty piping, though. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's still piping. It's possible, but it's also piping because it hasn't really worked out this year. Mainly last game, it kind of bit them. Sean Payton's definitely probably regretting it. I mean, he's probably I would make the same call again, but at the same time, Taysom Hill fumbling, then they kind of got stopped on a 3rd down with a screen pass to him as well. There's probably some regrets. Even though, he'd probably say, if I go back, I'd probably do it again. But still, it didn't work out. So maybe teams are starting to figure it out a bit. He probably gets 1 of these, I'd actually say. And that's kind of bold, too. But that's why even 1 of these is a little bold. So 3 of them definitely piping. But that would be interesting. Again, all it takes is 3 plays for him inside the red zone. But that's, I guess, easier said than done there. Next, from Matthew B., Myles Garrett is shut down by the Cowboys offensive line Sunday. Thought this was interesting because Myles Garrett doesn't really get shut down. He's a fantastic player, and I think he is actually the key player. If I had to pick a key player from the Browns-Cowboys game, it'd be Myles Garrett. And that's interesting because it's going to be an offense game. We all know that. Both teams, offensive game. Whoever scores more points wins. That sounds really stupid, but it's going to be whoever wins the shootout there. Why is Myles Garrett the key player? Because if he makes that extra play, he forces that extra turnover, that extra hurry, that could be the difference. I trust the Cowboys offense a little more than the Browns offense, but the Cowboys don't really, Aldon Smith's been balling, but nobody really has that Myles Garrett there, so he can be that game changer. And it's rare that he gets shut down, but it sounds like Tyrone Smith's going to come back. He's supposed to practice today. It sounds like he's going to come back, and that's really a guy that really nobody... It's really hard for anybody, even like Myles Garrett, to get around. So they could shut down. Tyrone Smith could shut down Myles Garrett, but I'm still going to call piping. I think he has a pretty big day. Tyrone maybe not full go, so I think he had a pretty big day. Even if he doesn't even get a sack, he gets some pressures. It's hard to say shut down. I guess define shut down. I guess that's the tough part. But I think he has a pretty good game, so he will not be shut down in my opinion. Stefan, I think, Dahl Olsen, Marlon Humphrey with 2 turnovers after getting the big bucks. Yeah, big Marlon Humphrey fan, where he came from out of Alabama. He was good there. But I think the amount of, and he was always athletic, but the amount of physicality, the strength he's added to his game, just play in general this early. It usually takes a long time for solid corners to become the very solid corners, but what he's done in a short amount of time has been very impressive. So I'm not really big on paying corners a lot of money. I think my value on the position is a little lower than everyone else's, but if you get 2-star corners, which is rare, way easier said than done, then yeah, you try to keep them together. So I agree with the Ravens doing it in this case. I do like Marlon Humphrey. 2 turnovers after getting the big bucks. I'm gonna say warm. Maybe that's bold of me because warm means very. I didn't even go realistic hot here. I went warm. And that's pretty bold of me, I think. I think bold that, yeah, but he can do this. He can get the turnovers against Dwayne Haskins, who's been turning the ball over quite a bit. I think it's possible 2 interceptions. I think an interception or a forced fumble is very possible as well. I'm not saying it happens, but I very much can see this. So maybe I went a little bold myself here on that one, but I like that one. Alex Wright, Browns beat the Cowboys, and Chubb and Hunt both get at least 100 yards on the ground. I usually don't like these specific, yardage, but I like this one. This was interesting to me because I think we had a scenario like this last week where I said, let's just say I missed the game for some reason. I fell asleep, didn't get up. Not going to happen. But let's say I missed the game, the Cowboys-Browns game, and you told me, and I asked somebody, they told me the Browns won, and they said, what happened? Predict what happened since you don't know. I would say that the Browns came up, if I want to get specific here, the Browns came out passing. They came out passing, and they were lighting up this Cowboys offense, and they took this lead. They got a pretty good lead, and they were making the Cowboys try to play keep up, and then they were pounding the football and running extremely well with both their running backs. That's my scenario that the Browns win there. And it could be a different scenario that's realistic. It could be they come out running, and they just and the Cowboys just can't stop them. But I kind of went specific there, but that if the Browns won, I think it'd be because of that, and for that reason, I think it's very realistic. I'm still trying to still deciding between realistic, hot, and warm here because it's pretty specific that the Browns have to win. Yeah, and I'll call it realistic. I did pick the Cowboys, but it could go either way. And if the Browns do win, I think this is very possible. But that's still another thing. 2 running backs have to get 100 yards. But it's definitely more realistic than I think most would think here. Just because I guess the matchup, what they can do on the Cowboys. So that is a very interesting one. From Dot Prescott, Pats hold the Chiefs to less than 22 points. I like this one because the Patriots so well coached on defense. They've been super impressive. And they know how to game plan, defensively better than anybody, really. But I'm still going to call it piping. I talked about it in the score predictions. I talked about it in the picks video. It's a similar matchup for the Chiefs offense versus the Ravens defense. And the same thing, similar for the Chiefs offense versus the Patriots defense. Both defenses, run a lot of man. The Chiefs defense runs a lot of man too, but that's besides the point here. Both defenses run a lot of man, and they both don't. They both, the Ravens couldn't get a lot of pressure. Man works out if you can. I like man a lot if you can get pressure. And the Ravens usually get it by blitz. You couldn't blitz Mahomes. They had no edge rush pressure there. The Patriots' only chance here is getting the edge rush pressure. Winovich has been pretty solid. Other than that, really not much pressure at all. And Winovich's going to have his hands full against a pretty good tackle group here, pretty well coached offensive line, and a pretty good quarterback. So man coverage is going to be way harder to do here. Because of Mahomes, because of the lack of pressure, and because of the speed. That's mainly there. If you're going against these fast guys, man coverage is hard enough against any NFL receiver. But going against these fast guys and covering for that long while Mahomes is sitting back there or escaping sacks or you're not getting any pressure, it's going to be impossible. So the Ravens were almost forced to switch their defense, something they're not used to, running more zone than they're used to. And Mahomes is going to outplay that anytime. So I can see some similarities here. What could happen? I don't really expect. Maybe they won't push the ball that much. Patriots might be a little more prepared than the Ravens were. But I think that it's a really good matchup for the Chiefs offense. Therefore, I think the interesting 22 points. I like that he put it just over 21. Because you could think 21's possible, but I think they get over 22 points there. So I would say that's piping. I don't remember if I had to pop up. We're doing it again, piping. That's a good one, though. Chase Cooper, I thought this was an interesting one here. Hakeem Butler touchdown. So he's playing for the Eagles now. The Eagles picked him up. They stole him from a practice squad. He's on the actual team. Once again, the Eagles are insanely beat up at the receiver position. So I think they have one receiver. Is it Greg Ward, I believe, is practicing right now? They got some other guys that could step up. Other guys will play probably, but yeah, my point is there is a very, very much a lack of receivers, and I think that was Chase Cooper's point here that a Butler could actually score, and that actually sounds more realistic that maybe he'll have to be a receiver too at times. But I've also heard things that they're trying to work him out at tight end. Remember, Dallas Goedert's hurt. I thought that was interesting because Butler doesn't. I don't know if he has the build to him. He's very big, but I don't know if he has the build. But they want to use him as tight end. I do think it's possible just because maybe they'll be lacking a receiver and Butler has experience at receiver, and they might just tell him, hey, run down the sideline here, and maybe he's like the second option. The first option is not open. Carson Wentz got to throw him. So I do think it's pretty possible, but because other guys will still be ahead of him on the depth chart, and we really don't know what position he's playing, and he has to get out there, and he has to score. It's against the Niners defense. So the way I said that makes it sound like it's piping, but I'm actually going to say hot, and that's hot is still hot. It's not that realistic. So, but there might not be too many options. So Butler he's probably going to get an opportunity. That's a pretty good one. There. From Aiden Weingartner here, Eagles fired Doug Peterson after another loss. So listen, we're staying on the Eagles train. A lot of people calling for Doug Peterson to go. I think they could have got Miles Sanders going a little more last week. That was working, and it was like a tie game the whole time. They were in overtime. Miles Sanders was working, so they probably would have won the game, gotten to a better field position for a field goal. So they should have used Miles Sanders more. Miles Sanders, that is. But, and I guess you just got to win. Plain and simple. So some people out there, I don't think a lot of people are calling for that. I'm definitely going to say this is extra piping, though. If they do lose to a beat-up Niners team, it'll be disappointing, but they got full trust in Doug Peterson. There's a lot of people that still believe he's one of the better coaches, and I can't really disagree. Right now, it doesn't look like that. But the Eagles definitely believe that as well. They believe in their guys. They believe in what they've done. They won a Super Bowl only a few years ago with Doug Peterson. So I just really don't see that happen, especially now. This week, I don't even see it happen at the end of the season. And then we get a funny one at the end here from Dust Gaming. The Titans will not lose to the Steelers in Week 4. That game has been postponed to we don't know yet, but I'm thinking probably Week 7. But the Titans-Steelers game will not be played this week, so this I don't need to pop anything up in this one. This one's a fact. The Titans will not lose. That is a whole. It's kind of why I wanted to show this too, because that's an interesting situation. I think it's, Tuesday night was an option, and I didn't want a game to be Tuesday night because we have a schedule for our uploads, and that changes everything for our picks. Our power rankings get pushed back, so I didn't really want a Tuesday night game. But honestly, this maybe needs to be played Tuesday night. Well, now it's not an option, but I understand they were worried that because more players are coming up with the COVID, so maybe more players because it takes some time for people to actually come down with it to test positive. So I can understand. But yeah, it seems like the Titans kind of got rewarded in a way because they had some injuries and they had some guys with the COVID. So this really worked out big time in their favor here. And I'm not really against that. I don't think they should be punished or anything. But it seemed like the Vikings, it feels like they're kind of get punished and they have nothing to do with this game. They're in a separate game. They're starting practice today. They get 2 days of practice. They got to fly out to Houston. They're going to play on Sunday. While they have the options of Monday and Tuesday, like I said, with this game. So I don't know if the NFL's really handling it that it's a tough situation, but yeah, it's interesting. So the Titans kind of a big winner in that category, in this situation, getting a pushback. So the Titans will not lose against the Steelers. They will not lose in Week 4 because they are not playing in Week 4. Both teams got a bye in Week 4. So, yep, that's a good one. Appreciate everyone for playing along. You'll get your chance next week. We got other videos like this throughout the channel. Go check them out. We also have power rankings, picks, score predictions, plenty more. A lot going on the Patreon. More to come on that as well. Please smash that like button. You're going to want to follow that Twitter link down below, and you're going to want to subscribe. Turn notifications on so you don't miss a thing. That's going to do it, though. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.